It's been just over a week now since we all learned of the terrible news. Reports out of Aurora, Colorado describing a shooting massacre at a late-night showing of the new Batman movie. News organizations scrambled, moving reporters and producers to the scene in order to report the horrific details, but not everyone got it right.
I want to go to Brian Ross here, because Brian, you've been looking at investigating the background of Jim Holmes here. You found something that might be significant.
There is a Jim Holmes of Aurora, Colorado page on the Colorado Tea Party site as well, talking about him joining the Tea Party last year. Now, we don't know if this is the same Jim Holmes, but it's Jim Holmes of Aurora, Colorado.
That was Brian Ross, ABC's investigative reporter, talking to George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America. Of course, it was not the Jim Holmes, Jim. On a scale of 1 to 5, if 5 is completely lacking in journalistic credibility, where would you put this one?
6. And here's why. Not only did they get it wrong, not only did Brian Ross use that great journalistic tool known as Google to find this guy, Jim Holmes, but then they put Brian Ross on that night on ABC World News, at 6:30 p.m., and he did a completely different story about the shooting or something like that. Never apologized. They did apologize during the day, but they owed not only the viewers but also Mr. Holmes, the innocent one, a full, complete retraction on the air. This goes into the category of, but they were so eager to put up the Tea Party thing in there, too good to check, they couldn't wait, and they didn't even apologize.
Does nobody at ABC stop and think, Judy, hey, maybe we ought to check this out before we go to air with it?
Well, I think that's the interesting question about this episode. Everybody makes mistakes, but where were the editors? I mean, where were the people who say maybe we ought not to put that on the air until we found out whether or not there's another Jim Holmes, which there was, whose email was overflowing and whose phone was ringing off the hook, and he never got an apology from anyone at ABC.
After the Gabby Giffords shooting, there was some effort to pin that event on the Tea Party and political vitriol and Sarah Palin and the ads she had taken out, all of which was wrong.
Yeah, well, it's completely distasteful, first of all. You have this horrible tragedy, and then people are jumping to try to say, oh, let's blame it on the Tea Party or a political party. At the same time, you had Breitbart coming out and criticizing this and then saying, oh, and by the way, we think this guy might be a registered Democrat. So it's like, then they're just doing the exact same thing. So I just think it would be nice if we could just take this out of the discussion. And, even if the person is a registered Democrat, what's the implication? Or if they're a member of the Tea Party, what's the implication that that's why they did this? That's absurd.
But it's worth saying that Breitbart's website is not ABC News.
Oh, of course.
That's someone like Brian Ross who's been around this business forever. You would think the first rule in an incident like this, when there's so much inherently uncertain information floating around, you don't go into Google and just throw something up on the air automatically when you hit upon it. And there's only really one explanation for this kind of mistake. It's unthinking contempt that suffuses the mainstream media for the Tea Party.
Well, and then it went on. I mean, there was the controversy at ABC over the mother's statement to an ABC producer about whether the son was the right person. ABC implied that she somehow knew that her son was capable of doing this or had been planning.
They apparently woke Mr. Holmes' mother up out of a dead sleep and asked, are you the mother of? And she said this, whatever exactly she said. Who knows? I mean, once you lose trust in a news organization, for all the reasons we've all been saying, the editors and the fact-checking process, and how do you know for sure what happened there? And the additional issue of whether or not Holmes in his jail cell is spitting at the prison guards. ABC has said that, too. You literally can't trust him anymore.
Well, I hate to keep bringing up ABC, but they keep apparently making these mistakes, Judy. They said that he was spitting on guards and wearing a mask in the jail. Even the Denver ABC station contradicted that report.
Right. It gets to be a kind of NBC problem when they were having their editorial gaffes. You have to ask, what's going on here? Why is nobody checking? What is it about this story? Because on other stories, ABC doesn't do this. So what happened in this case? I think some journalism student somewhere is going to have one heck of a master's thesis.
It's a very competitive business, journalism. We all want to be first, but you have to get it right.
Yeah, well, and that's why it's surprising. You were saying, how did this get on with Brian Ross? I doubt Brian Ross really runs things past other people, right? I mean, in a situation like that, he probably is able just to Google and just go right on the air with it because he's a very well-established journalist that I think people trust. And so it's hard to understand how something like this happens, how he would even think that this you know, he wouldn't think, well, I want to make sure this is right.
And why doesn't George Stephanopoulos say, wait a minute, a name like Jim Holmes is pretty common. Can we take a step back here?
Yeah, you would think so. And again, I don't even understand the logic, the chain of logic from Tea Party to shooting movie theaters. I mean, this is not a major plank of Tea Party ideology, you know, violence at movie theaters. So again, it's only a product of a really distorted and basically hateful view.
And we might ask, suppose Brian Ross had gone to George Stephanopoulos and said, I want to say on the air that the shooter has something to do with the Obama campaign. Do you think they would have, put that on the air immediately and don't check it? Or do you think they would have said, hold on, let's just call David Axelrod and check with him first if he's in fact affiliated? They would have done something much more than they did in this.